Hi, my name is Jazz Russell. I'm Director of the AI Coaching Alliance, and I'm also on the Skills and Diversity Council of Tech UK, the technology trade body for the UK and advisory body for the government. I'm an Industry 5 consultant and researcher in AI, ethics, technology enhanced learning, and also executive coaching in the workplace. Today in this presentation we're going to look at Coaching 5.0, which is Industry 5.0 driven form of coaching for the fifth industrial revolution, specifically aimed at cultivating workforce stewardship. The topics we're going to look at today are Industry 5.0, the fifth industrial revolution, how it's prioritising caretaking of human development, capability and capacity. We're looking at that in concert with how technology is being adapted, integrated and adopted, especially in the rollout of AI affordances and initiatives. Now, Industry 5.0 is calling for human and machine intelligence capabilities and capacities to strategically harmonise with one another. It's really in service to flourishing of future workforces and workplaces, while ethically enhancing productivity, performance and profit. It calls for digital literacy, especially around AI essentials. The human skills of critical thinking, creativity, as well as emotional and social intelligence are going to be really important to facilitate what's going to happen with workforces, especially when it comes to managing of human discretion and cognitive decline that might come from using technologies too much. So we'll be looking at how competence sometimes can be abdicated, thinking, capacity to think, over to AI and other technologies, and exactly how they should be adopted, looking at augmentation and automation of tasks in the workplace, but also looking at a cycle of how these technologies can be rolled out through a process of adaptation, augmentation, integration, adoption and automation. Lastly, we're going to be looking at how learning has got to be focused on generating transferable skills and knowledge and intelligence and data, and how that curated through humanity-centric collaboration skills will drive an Industry 5.0 cycle. It's all in the aim of improving productivity and performance to boost business revenues, contributing to hopefully an enhanced UK society and economy. So how that's done through collaboration skills is going to be critical, and I'll be talking about that at the end. To begin with, let's have a look at how big changes happen over history. They typically happen through what might be called paradigm shifts, and what I'm sharing here with you is my emerging paradigm model. It explores the evolution of knowledge, practice and associated technology in any discipline. Now, it suggests new paradigms in industry and society progress through three stages. The first is there is a shift in mindset. New ways of thinking emerge that reframe reality through rising anomalies or gaps in knowledge. Now, those mindsets then get put into practice. They're implemented through new techniques and tested in practical ways. If there are any issues with the mindsets, they typically show up at this stage, and those mindsets might be dumped if they aren't that effective. If they are good though, eventually they're going to need to be put out to more people, and this is where technology can come in and help scale things and disseminate things. So the techniques and the tests for mindsets are refined and scaled up through the use of technologies, and that helps in the dissemination of those mindsets and the techniques that implement them. If it's done right, it'll show up flaws in the techniques, and even may show flaws up in the mindsets that previously weren't there. And if it turns out that mindsets and techniques are pretty coherent and solid and they work and they are of value, then it might actually lead to a situation where, full circle, the technology can actually go back and generate whole new mindsets, whole new ways of actually doing things. Something we're seeing very much in the current industrial era, especially with technologies like AI. If we look at paradigm shifts that have happened in history, one of the ways that they typically show up is through major industrial revolutions. The very first industrial revolution happened in 1784 when textiles that were being produced were taken from manual ways of production into automated or mechanised ways of production. The second industrial revolution happened around 1870, and it led to the emergence of mass production and the use of assembly lines, especially in car manufacturing. Later on, in the 1960s, computing and automation through that started to emerge, and that was the third industrial revolution. Around 2012, a lot of Internet of Things, electronics, devices and other things end up being interconnected via the internet, and that led to the emergence of the fourth industrial revolution. Not long after that, around 2015 actually, the first ideas for Industry 5.0 emerged, especially focusing on sustainability and human flourishing. But in the 2020s, following the pandemic, there was a new reinvigorated focus on human flourishing alongside of the use of digital technologies, and there became a strong focus to get people's intelligence and machine intelligence to help one another out. So there was a very strong focus on collaborative, digital and emotional intelligence. The fifth industrial revolution, otherwise known as Industry 5.0, was something that in 2015 was proposed by Michael Rada, and that mindset was driven to protect the environment and sustainable human flourishing through a no waste or wasteless world. Now, since the 2020 pandemic, mental health has declined as digital and AI technologies have been seen increasing adoption, and adapted Industry 5.0 mindsets that have arisen from the Japanese Society 5.0 approach around 2017 have been adopted into the EU's future Industry 5.0 vision for workplaces and workforces. Now, a key industry aim is to actually harmonise the use of human intelligence with machine intelligence, especially through environmentally sustainable practices. So we want to get from a place currently where a lot of technology is being used, but humans are a secondary thought, to the opposite, where humans are primary thought and technologies are there in service to human beings and their flourishing and their productivity and their advancement. Industry 5 environments typically consist of three different kinds of ecosystems. Ecosystems that are to do with people and how they work with each other. Ecosystems to do with different kinds of technology and how they're worked with together in organizations, as well as actual natural environmental ecosystems. The meta system that collectively works with these three things together, the Industry 5.0 meta system, is something that is going to really need to be well managed in the future for operations to be effective and efficient. So, as we said earlier, Industry 5.0 is calling for human and machine intelligence and associated capabilities and capacities to strategically harmonise with one another to serve the flourishing of future workforces and workplaces while ethically enhancing productivity, performance and profit. Now, it requires workplace people ecosystems to exercise conservation of energy in coherent working practices, in congruence with well-being, welfare and enhanced collaboration, emotional and social intelligence, critical thinking, compassion, as well as creativity. Now, human beings in people ecosystems must be fit enough to transfer intelligence into technology ecosystems to make them more intelligent, efficient, and effective, while being aligned in their operations in integrated, coherent ways with natural ecosystems, driving that sustainability factor. Now, since the election of the UK Labour government in 2024, there has been a dedicated effort to digitally upskill those studying in schools, colleges and universities, as well as private and public sector workplaces. Now, Skills England and the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, that's IFATE, have been revising their priorities around the types of education and training that will prepare future workforces, especially in how they utilise technologies in the workplace together with people skills. Now, the key pillars of future workforce forward skilling centre on how integrated human and machine intelligence drives learning that can generate transferable skills, knowledge and data, which can in turn, through fostering of human flourishing skills, drive further, richer learning and development in a virtuous, sustainable cycle. If we look at that cycle of learning that generates transferables, that is curated through synergy skills like collaboration and critical thinking, that ultimately feeds back on improving learning, then there are specific overlaps that need to be considered with regards to those domains and those parts of that cycle. Now, partly in response to recent calls from the UK government, there's been a big increase for those entering workforces to get upskilled in areas to do with digital literacy and essentials to do with AI, but all in concert with increasing calls for securing human skills of critical thinking, creativity, as well as emotional and social intelligence. Now, it's critical to ensure human discretion doesn't atrophy or lead to cognitive decline, because some people can just not choose to exercise their competence and abdicate it and choose to do things out of convenience, use technology instead. But it's not just competence that can be abdicated for convenience. It could be our thinking, critical thinking especially, and those kind of capacities, when they're abdicated over to AI and other technologies that are being championed in the workplace for augmentation and automation of tasks in the workplace, it can ultimately lead to a decline in the faculties and capabilities of human beings that are in the workforce. Now, the process involves taking people through a process of learning that begins with learning in small bite-sized pieces, micro-learning, which is perhaps done together with other people through collaborative learning. It'll be done in a continuous way, and hopefully it'll be done in a lifelong way as well. That learning has to generate data, knowledge, skills, behaviors, duties, responsibilities, and power that are transferable over to others. Because the more the learning generates things that are transferable, the more sustainable learning will be in the workplace and in colleges and schools and in society. Now, the way to sustain that transferring of knowledge and skills and other things like data in machines, for example, is through synergy skills. This involves people developing literacy around collaboration, how to be creative, sustaining curiosity, and exercising critical thinking, fostering trust, as well as developing and refining emotional and social intelligence. Now, these synergy skills allow for those transferable assets to be refined and reused and evolved for new kinds of learning and new types of learning, so completing a kind of virtuous circle here. The overlapping areas between the learning, transferables, and synergy skills, how learning actually becomes something that is transferable, or how transferables are actually changed through synergy skills and ultimately into learning. Those overlapping areas are the areas that Coaching 5.0 focuses on. It's all about how things convert or transform from learning into transferables, from transferables into synergy skills, and from synergy skills into new kinds of learning. Something to bear in mind about the learning and how it generates transferables and through synergy skills generate more advanced learning is that that cycle doesn't just apply to human beings. It also applies to AIs and technologies, learning and generating transferables, and through synergy creating further learning. And it also applies to environmental ecosystems too. The thing to consider about all these different kinds of systems is to look at one of the factors where often people will say that your job is something that not likely should be replaced by AI, but likely should be replaced by someone who uses AI. That's not necessarily true. The fact is, if you work, practice, or act like a robot, you can be replaced by one, or worse, become one. The most advanced technology in the room is not an AI or other digital systems. It's something with data sets gathered over hundreds of thousands of years across billions of people and through ever-evolving advanced genetic algorithms, models, neural networks, and ecosystems of diverse, creative, sentient, and conscious intelligences. The most advanced technology in the room is your humanity. However advanced AI or other technologies get, you still have a unique value and affordance of your personal humanity and its connection and interconnection with the collective humanity of the world. Now, if technology can help advance your personal humanity together with others, it can help advance humanity as a whole. Probably the most important thing that needs to be managed in Industry 5.0 environments are transferables and getting them to connect and work with one another in harmonized kind of ways. Now, you can take an approach to working with things like knowledge and skills and behaviors in ways that work with humans, or you can combine the human approaches with technology approaches, or you can actually just work with the technology approaches alone. So there's 3 different ways in which it can be done, and it can be best shown by these 2 areas overlapping. So on the one side, you have things that can be done through technology, and those technologies might generate things like transferable data, information, knowledge, intelligence, and maybe even skills and wisdom through things like AI agents, for example. And when I say transferable, I mean the data and all these other things could be transferred from one AI system or technology system to another. So there's a lot of interaction and collaboration between different AI components in that technology ecosystem. On the other side, things might be managed through human discretion. Typically, these are things which AI you don't want to give responsibility to or give decision-making power over to. So these all include things like transferable duties or transferable responsibilities or even transferable power. In the middle ground, there are things that probably can be best managed in the combination of AI technology and human discretion and synergy. And typically those things are behaviors of one kind or another. Now, AIs can have certain behaviors, especially through flows of agent-making decisions, but equally human beings, of course, can have behaviors too. So the thing that joins up technologies with humans is their respective behaviors. And if you can couple together human behaviors with technology behaviors, then you're probably going to get a good, coherent, congruent interaction which links together different ecosystems in a way that's really sustainable. Now, if we put together the ideas that we've been talking about so far, the idea of people ecosystems, technology ecosystems, and environmental ecosystems all working together in a coherent, sustainable way, and also the ideas of the Industry 5.0 catalyst cycle, where the catalysts of learning and transferable assets being generated from that being curated through synergy skills to enhance further learning, then we'll get this Industry 5.0 meta system consisting of all those different kinds of ecosystems, the people ecosystems, technology ecosystems, environmental ecosystems, and also the ecosystems within them that relate to learning, generating transferable skills, and that being driven through synergy skills to generate further learning. If you look here, you'll find that the different learning in each of the ecosystems is actually connected. The different kind of transferables that are generated in each of the systems are interlinked, and also the synergy skills of each ecosystem are all linked together as well. So let's have a look at those and see what that looks like. So the learning ecosystems you can see here are all tied together, and across the whole Industry 5 metasystem, they form an ecosystem in themselves. They're all joined up. They can influence one another. Learning in people can affect the learning of technology, and that can influence how learning and growth happens even in environmental or natural ecosystems. The transferables, they all join up to how transferables are generated with people and in people ecosystems, can influence how transferables are generated in technology ecosystems, especially around data, intelligence, and information, and that can influence how transferables are actually created in natural and environmental ecosystems, and that in turn ultimately can go back and influence how things are generated for people. Lastly, the synergy skills within people ecosystems, technology ecosystems, and environmental ecosystems, they can all feed into each other and influence each other too. If we look at them all together, you can see the learning ecosystem, the transferables ecosystem, and the synergy skills ecosystems, they all influence each other and integrate with each other to form a much larger meta-level ecosystem that's based on the learning, the transferables, and the synergy skills. Now, that Industry 5.0 catalyst cycle consists of a trinity of ecosystems, hence why it's called the catalyst cycle trinity ecosystem. Now, however coherently we join together people ecosystems and technology ecosystems and natural environmental ecosystems with ecosystems to do with learning and generating transferable skills and knowledge and data and information and duties, together with the synergy skills ecosystems that ultimately refine the learning to higher levels, there are going to be some issues that start to emerge. One of them is that people will start to use technologies for convenience at the expense of their own competence, because they might be a bit low on resources or energy or time or attention or even ethics. So the phrase that I've been known for that relates to this is that convenience can end up eating competence for breakfast. Now, convenience eats competence for breakfast for a very specific reason. We have competencies, or are in need of ones, that can be handled better by AI. However, when we are in short supply of time, energy, resources, people to support us, and even low on ethics, we will default to whatever convenience is accessible or affordable. The problem is, if we hand over things by default to AI for convenience, our own competencies like critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, emotional and social intelligence, as well as compassion and our conscience, can start to atrophy. We could end up not being fit to work with technologies like AI. Machines will get smarter and smarter, and humans will become dumber and dumber. Now, we cannot afford becoming dumb humans, being in control of sophisticated machines with advanced intelligence. One of the things that will help us to ensure that machines don't get smarter and smarter and humans get dumber and dumber is to adopt a rollout cycle for technology to be worked with in conjunction with human beings and also the environment. The 5 stages that personally I would suggest people consider when rolling out technologies into organizations or adopting them are adaptation, augmentation, integration, adoption, and automation. Now, adaptation can give time for people to adjust processes without starting to use new technology, or at least get ready for it. Augmentation can slowly introduce technology, and integration can start to embed it into operations. Full adoption of technologies like AI will actually lead to the formalized use of those technologies. Now, if tasks can actually be safely taken over by technology, then automation is something that can actually be implemented. What should not be done is to automate tasks first and then attempt forced adoption, integration, and augmentation, and then hope people will adapt. That way, it always tends to lead to undesired exposure to risks and conflicts with catastrophic rollout failures. To avoid those catastrophic rollout failures, it's always best to start with the humans that are in your organization. Make any strategy centered on the humanity, assets and capital that you've got in your organization. So actually take a humanity-centric process or strategy for different things collaborating with each other, whether it's different people, whether it's different technologies or different natural ecosystems, or whether it's those 3 things together, how people collaborate with technologies and also work with the environment at the same time. It's centered on that process of harmonizing transferables and having a clear idea of what should be done by humans, what should be done by technologies, and what might need to be done in a joint integrated way. I would consider focusing on integrated approaches rather than hybrid approaches. I consider hybrid to be different from integrated. Hybrid typically means two things working side by side with each other, maybe interfacing with each other. Integrated means they're not just interfacing with each other, they're just not connected and exchanging stuff, but they're actually part of each other. There's a bit more of a symbiosis between the technologies or the individual humans or the actual people ecosystems and the technology ecosystems. There'll need to be something very similar with regards to a symbiosis between the human and technology combined ecosystems and natural ecosystems as well. But learning has ultimately got to focus on generating transferable skills, and it's got to do that through humanity-centric collaboration skills, specifically to address existing or emerging illiteracy in collaboration. So people might have illiteracy in collaboration. There might be technologies that are not collaborating with each other effectively. Together, those things might not necessarily be working together with the environment in a coherent, symbiotic way. So it's really important that any illiteracy there is, whether it's with people, whether it's technology or the environment, it's actually addressed. One of the best ways you can address illiteracy in collaboration, whether it's with people, technologies, or the environment, is to use the collaboration cycle. The collaboration cycle is like a compass for collaboration, and it works in a very, very simple way in that it connects things together, and then it slowly builds momentum for them to engage and exchange and collaborate with one another in the aim of creating something or developing something. Now, collaboration is something that begins at home. A person or individual needs to learn how to collaborate with themselves, and self-collaboration is a really important skill for helping an individual function and flourish at work, and it's a necessary prerequisite for someone to go on and collaborate with other people, because if they're not collaborating with themselves, they're probably going to end up getting in their own way, and they're probably going to get in the way of others. But if they are collaborating with themselves, then they're probably going to be able to get out of their own way and find their way. And if they do that together with others, then collectively people can find their way together beyond their current problems. Collaboration very much begins with connection, but it's not any old connection. It's got to be a connection where you are driven by why you're trying to do something. And why you're trying to do anything is typically for one of three reasons. You're doing it because you want to be empowered. You want to do something that's serious and that will help you grow, perhaps. You're doing it because you're just curious and you want to engage, or you're doing it just for fun and you just want to do something in a playful way. It's a combination of those things, and each one will be in different ratios or proportions for different people. So when two different people come together, their unique mix of the components that make up their own individual why is going to bump up against the mix of another person. And they might not necessarily collaborate because they don't necessarily align in terms of their interests in each of these areas. One person might be interested in being serious and focusing on empowerment and growth. Another one might be focused on just playing around, and another one is just might be someone who's more focused just on being curious. So it's really important that when people come together and connect for collaboration purposes, that these 3 or 4 different areas are reconciled in some kind of way, so that people actually form a very strong bond or connection. If there are difficulties and conflict arises and difference of opinions arise, then it's possible to look at people's needs and their requests for what they want and get them addressed through processes or frameworks like nonviolent communication. And once that initial connection has been made, if it's sufficiently strong, the bond, then it will naturally generate the trust and the momentum and the sense of value for people to actually start having conversations with each other. And that's really where the collaboration cycle begins proper. once that connection is made. Without connection, there's not going to be any conversation, let alone people cooperating, contributing to each other, and committing to collaborating with one another to create something they want to communicate out into the world and hopefully make further connections with. So collaboration starts with connection, and it's based on a common why between people, and it's usually driven by those forces of empowerment, engagement, and entertainment, and mediated by non-violent communication to ensure that needs are married in a kind of non-judgmental and compassionate way. Now, if the connection is good, with sufficient trust, momentum, and traction, and proof of value that things are worthwhile, either through evidence-based approaches or direct experience or models of knowledge or education which are proven to work, then conversations are naturally going to ensue between people. There'll be a kind of effect which will lead to a slingshot of energy from connection to a conversation, provided there's a strong enough connection. Now, in a similar way, if the trust and the momentum and the proof of value continues to build, then that slingshot effect will generate even more momentum and take the collaboration beyond just conversation. It will lead to people actually cooperating with each other, where they'll start contributing to each other, either in terms of time, money, knowledge, all sorts of things. And if it's a mutual contribution and not just one way, then people will typically tend to get together and make a commitment. So up till now, everything was transactional, but now things become formal. Usually at this dividing line of commitment, we see a movement from cooperation to genuine collaboration. So that's the difference between cooperation and collaboration for me. It comes down to mutual contribution that's reached a significant enough level such that the trust, the momentum, and the proof of value people are getting from each other leads to them to actually want to commit to doing something for the long term, rather than just for short term and small transactional kind of exchanges. So as soon as that commitment's made, then people can start planning for the long term and collaborating on something that's not just the short term. And the collaboration usually focuses on creating something as a creation process, which naturally follows from that. And if the creation process leads to something genuinely being created that has value and is innovative in the world and has a use, then the people who are collaborating will typically not just want to keep it to themselves. They'll want to communicate it, they want to disseminate it and make it available to other people. And if they do it right, it will lead to them connecting to a whole new group of people and having conversations with them. And it begins a whole new collaboration cycle. And it goes beyond them out into the world. Now, this same collaboration cycle can also work for an individual and not just for people. A person, an individual, can actually look at what they want to do that empowers them, that engages them, and maybe even entertains them, and look at their needs and what they want. And providing they connect to their own personal why, they'll actually form a connection with themselves. And it's possible they'll start having conversations with themselves, in their mind, in their head. And that will lead to them actually cooperating with themselves to get things done in their life. It's the same principles, providing the person is able to trust themselves and they can demonstrate proof of value to themselves for what they're doing, and they feel they're getting sufficient traction and momentum for what's happening for them. They'll naturally move from one stage to the next. And they'll make commitments to themselves, they'll collaborate with the different parts of their lives in order to create something that they can communicate a difference with out in the world, and hopefully that will lead to them being able to connect with other people and begin collaborations with them, and now start a whole new collaboration cycle, but together with other people. Now, some people do get stuck. For example, if two people are looking to make a commitment with one another and one person's been doing all the contribution, but they've not really valued the other person enough to allow them to contribute, they may find that that person won't make a commitment because they think that they're not valued. And sometimes in teams, you get individuals who everybody helps, but nobody calls on them to actually help them. And there comes a point where they just start doing their own thing. And typically what happens is people start going backwards in the collaboration cycle. So, for example, at the stage of commitment, they start to withdraw a contribution. They stop cooperating, they stop talking to people, and eventually a connection breaks with other people, and they wonder why they were even, collaborating with those people at all. So when things start to go in reverse around the collaboration cycle, then you get the reverse behavior. Instead of collaboration, you get competition. People start being competitive and self-interested. Trust starts to decline, momentum and traction starts to decline. There's more and more inertia, and typically proof of value starts to get less and less, and people just don't see the point in doing certain things. And eventually there's no trust at all. Eventually there's no traction, and eventually there's no sense of value in any kind of exchange. And as I said, people will start to wonder why they're doing what they're doing, to the point where they may just drop out of those relationships. So if you do get stuck at any particular stage of the collaboration cycle, it's always worthwhile to look at the previous stage and see, have you done enough at that stage or some of the earlier stages. Usually if you go back to the previous stage before the one that you're at, that you're stuck, and address things there, and get the trust, momentum and proof of value needed, then you'll acquire enough energy to slingshot your way onto the next stage beyond where you currently are. So use collaboration like a compass, but it's something, like I said, that is not just for use for human beings. It's also something that could be used for technologies and ecosystems of technologies collaborating with each other. It can be used for understanding how different components of a natural ecosystem collaborate with each other, and ultimately how all those ecosystems collaborate with each other, the people, the technology, and the environmental ecosystems, as well as their components, the learning ecosystems, the transferable ecosystems, and also the synergy skills ecosystems. Collaboration cycle is responsible for overseeing the development and flow of all of those ecosystems. So it's really, really critical to use it, and it's quite intuitive to work with, and its drivers are pretty clear. They're usually, as I said, very much based on things like trust, momentum and traction, as well as proof of value that things are worthwhile to actually pursue and invest time and energy into. So that's kind of summary of it, but you can see that when there's sufficient mutual reciprocal contribution that can secure commitment, that is the dividing line between just cooperating with people in transactional ways and then stepping into a long-term transformational kind of work with them, maybe even transcendental work, where you're not just changing what you do and how you do things, but even maybe who you are and how you're coming across to other people. If you look at all the different mindsets, techniques and technologies that are needed for stewardship of workforces and workplaces, you can see there's a few here that I've actually introduced, specifically looking at paradigm shifts, looking at the meta system of Industry 5.0, which consists of people ecosystems, technology ecosystems and environmental ecosystems, and then how within each of those there are cycles of change and catalysts that work within those ecosystems, specifically driving learning into generating transferable skills and knowledge and data, and then that being converted into synergy skills that ultimately use to refine the learning even further. Now that's all going on within one ecosystem, and that cycle going on within one ecosystem couples with the same kind of cycle going on in the other ecosystems, the technology and environmental ecosystems, for example, and together they form this interesting trinity of ecosystems to do with learning, to do with generating transferable skills and knowledge and data and assets, as well as curation of synergy skills. When we actually roll those out into organizations, we have to do it in a way where the relationship between human beings and technology and natural ecosystems is, first of all, something that's simply adapted to. Secondly, augmentation starts to happen, and technology is brought in to at least be worked with, and it starts to be embedded in certain operations through integration, and it might be then formally adopted into the operations of the organization. And if there are tasks which can be easily taken over by technologies, then they may very well be put through a process which leads to them actually having automation arranged for them. At this point, the cycle comes full circle, and it will probably be a situation where whole new kinds of adaptation now will be needed, bearing in mind what's been augmented, integrated, adopted, and automated. It's a really good idea not to do things in reverse, where you try and automate things and then adopt them and integrate them and augment them, and then hopefully people will adapt. You'll find that way does not work. It's best to do it in a clockwise way around this fashion. Now, if you ensure that all of the things that you're working with the people ecosystems, technology and environmental ecosystems, in curating learning and transferables and synergy skills through the process of adaptation, augmentation, integration, adoption, automation, it's all overseen by collaboration and literacy in that, starting with individuals with self-collaboration and then extending that out to others, into teams, departments and organizations, then you're going to get a high likelihood that those people ecosystems, technology ecosystems, and how they work in a sustainable way with nature are actually going to work together well in coherent and congruent ways that will lead to conservation of energy and resources, people's time and attention. It will encourage human flourishing, and hopefully it will lead to productivity and performance and profit for the organization, all in a way while respectfully and ethically working with the environment and minimizing waste and impact on climate and other factors. So I trust this overall perspective of how to use Industry 5.0 mindsets for coaching people, for developing technologies to work with them in ways that are respectful of the environment, has been helpful to you. Thank you.